credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Man podcast, a podcast centered around self-mastery. I'm your host, Zach Shankin. This week, I wanted to do kind of more of a free-flowing one. Didn't have any particular topic I wanted to touch on, so I asked on Instagram and then some of the guys in the actual Vitruvian Man community if they had any questions. So I wanted to do an AMA-style podcast where I had people just ask whatever they wanted. I tried to kind of organize these questions so that they have some sort of flow, but I apologize if it's a bit sporadic, but this will be a good way to kind of poke into my mindset, what I think about a varied amount of topics here. So I guess I can just get right into these. I'll start with a question from Alec, and he asked, what was your college routine that led to success, and how did you succeed with time management? So we've talked about success before on the podcast, and I will deem my college experience as a success. Some people may not, but I don't want this to come off as arrogant or the way, but we're going to assume that what I had in college was a successful routine. I was able to manage being in a fraternity, eventually becoming the president of that fraternity. I was competing in college lacrosse and then also studying biomedical engineering. So I was balancing a fair amount, I would say, compared to the average college student. I was also training in the weight room 5 to 6 days a week, and trying my best to manage reading as well, taking care of my body, all of that stuff. So it was an endeavor similar to the life I live now, and I was trying to get the most out of my college experience, also trying to be social every once in a while. So I can go into kind of my journey through university and to whatever degree of success I was able to accrue, and the lessons specifically around kind of time management and balancing all of those things. So coming into college, I went to a smaller high school. I graduated with 90 people. So definitely big fish, small pond. And then I ended up going to a larger university and became small fish, big pond pretty quickly. And coming into freshman year, I pretty much dove headfirst into all of that same stuff that I was listing before right off the bat, going through pledgeship, walking onto the lacrosse team, going through tryouts, fall practice, and then into the spring season, and then immensely academically outclassed compared to my high school. So that was probably the biggest adjustment was academically. What's nice about college and university, for those listening that are in college and university, is that you have what I would call a skeletal structure that is already fixed for you, meaning you have classes that you need to go to, office hours you need to attend, meetings, group projects, whatever, but those are fixed times. You need to be a place for a specific amount of time. So the first thing I would say for building out your schedule, and you can use Google Calendar, which is good, Apple Calendar, whatever your chosen digital calendar is, or even if you have a written one, I encourage you to have both. If you do have a written one, to have that digital version as well, just for keeping up with meetings, and now everything's on Zoom too. So anyway, that's kind of your skeleton, right? So that's the baseline, where you need to be, when you need to be there. And then from there, you're going to have these, it's kind of like in music, there's the note and then there's the space in between it, and the silence is as important as the note itself. Likewise, a schedule, the skeleton, the fixed places you need to be is as important as the gaps in between, because those gaps in between are time that you can be using for something towards a goal. So what you can do from your skeletal structure is look at other things that you want to implement that are larger, big buckets. So if it's, I want to have an hour in the gym every single day during the week, then you take that hour and see where it fits. Now, your schedule semester to semester is going to change, so you're going to need to change it for each semester. But you're going to see these big gaps. Maybe Tuesday, Thursday are your big class days, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday are not. Or maybe it's a reverse of that. Or maybe you have all your classes before noon or all your classes after noon. It changes a lot. But whatever it is, you're going to see these bigger gaps. If you have like a big 3-hour gap, maybe that's where you put your gym time towards the bottom half of it, knowing it's going to take you 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get back and shower. So block it front end of the day, back end of the day. I'm not going to tell you when or where to do that stuff. Training is kind of one of the more intimate things because some people like to train in the morning, at night. But the important thing is you're doing it. Exercising should be a priority for every college student. It's good for your physical and mental health. So start to block in those times. So now you're going to have a filled 1 hour block each day, and you'll know when they are. And the importance of putting it on the calendar is that it becomes like those other things, a non-negotiable. Like you're not just going to not show up to a team meeting when you're working on a project because you're going for other people. So if it's on your schedule and it says, oh, I need to be at the gym at this time, you just go. It's a non-negotiable. It's not like, because the other alternative is that you get to a place where stuff starts to come up, college gets hectic, it's exam week, it's finals preparation, there's a bunch of parties this week, you want to take a trip, so-and-so wants to go out for lunch. Like there's going to be a ton of stuff vying for your time and attention. You have to prioritize the stuff that serves you and is aligned with your goals. And so if going to the gym fits both of those categories, then you need to make it a non-negotiable and say, I'm going to this place at this time. It's on my calendar. And, this is barring a need to actually change it. Like there's a massive event or you need to travel somewhere off campus. But generally speaking, you don't want to be in the place where, I didn't do that homework assignment, so let me just use my gym time to do that, because it's a toxic cycle, and that's how you get out of the power of routine. So build in the blocks of non-negotiables. So say training's one of them, but then the next kind of level of this is where you can really up your game as a student. And I think the education system is a very kind of broken system, and it's very results oriented. But if you're interested in getting those results, it's pretty gamifiable. And so as far as completing tasks, you're going to have, let's just keep it generic. You're going to have your math homework, your English homework, and your science homework. And in university, it gets a lot more complicated than that and a lot more detailed. But for those things, you're going to have that kind of homework each week. So how long does a math homework take consistently? Let's say I need to work an hour on math, I need to work an hour and a half on my writing assignment, and I need to work 2 hours on science, and that's every single week. So look at the gaps, and you might have a 15-minute gap between, your math and science class on Tuesday, Thursday, but you have this 45-minute gap every other day. Well, maybe you plug in your math assignment as if it was a time block or a schedule or a meeting or a gym session. So start to plug in the actual assignments that you're doing into those gaps, the dead spaces. And that way you don't get faced with everyone talks about in college, the burden of free time or the illusion of free time. And it is true, because when I came to college, it was always I finish my classes by noon and I have nothing to do until 6 p.m. where I have dinner and I have to go do stuff for the fraternity or go to practice in the morning or whatever. I'll get my homework done during that time. But what really ends up happening is you get back from class, you're kind of tired, you open your phone, you spend 30 minutes scrolling, maybe you eat a snack, then you go to the bathroom, then you come back, more scrolling, I'll take care of it. And then somebody walks into the dorm room. Hey man, you want to come check this thing out? And then maybe you go to somebody else's dorm, you hang out for a while. And then before you know it's 6 p.m., you're going to dinner. And then the day flies by and you haven't done the things that you needed to do. And it's really bad when that stuff stacks up on a Thursday or a Friday or Sunday afternoon. Sunday scaries roll in and you have a bunch of shit due at 11:59 p.m. and you haven't done it. But it's way more manageable if you just block in those little tiny things and just attack them one assignment at a time. You're not going to have an infinite list of things to do. What's nice is you have a fixed list of things to do. You know exactly what you have to do and generally how long it's going to take you. Some stuff may take longer or shorter, but plug them in as if they were assigned time to you, and then just assign the time to yourself. This is going to be a huge separator. Most people don't even try to do this, learn to do this, attempt to do this. And so they just kind of float through college with low level anxiety. I have all this stuff to do. I'll get to it eventually. And then it inevitably is just procrastination, doing it at the last minute. And what's funny about procrastination in general is that if you can accomplish weeks worth of work in the few hours before it's due, think about it from an 80-20 perspective. That means it only technically takes you a couple of hours to do a week's worth of assignments if you're hyper-focused. Just spread those out across the week in fixed time blocks, and you will have more time than you know what to do with, and you can pour that into physical endeavors, extra reading, starting a side hustle, learning a new skill. A lot of universities have invention studios, learn how to 3D print, or they might have an arts program, learn how to go take video, learn how to edit, or start a podcast, whatever it is, like explore a little bit, and you'll be, if you're disciplined with the time of the fixed assignments you have within like the box that college tries to put you in, if you play the game that's in the box really well, you get to have a lot more time. College can be like a very expansive time, or it can be super limiting, but it's up to you to kind of grab it by the horns and get the most out of it. So I encourage you to do stuff like that. Plug in those individual assignments, those smaller things, as if they were time blocks. So I think that made a massive difference for me. And then another thing is, drinking and going out is fun, but it is a massive deterrent to any physical or productive kind of goals, period. So I would encourage you to limit it to 1 to 2 times a week if you're in college. If you don't drink at all, good on you. I didn't do it for my first 2 years of college, and I was fine, and I enjoyed that time. I had a ton of fun, made a ton of friends, especially because it was the first 2 years of college. So it's not a prerequisite to have an awesome time in college. It's not a prerequisite to have an awesome time in life. But if it is something that you're going to choose to incorporate it consciously as opposed to passively, and someone's like, hey, let's go out, and you just go on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, even Tuesday, whatever it is. And each university has its levels of degeneracy, but try to be intentional with how you incorporate that. Also, I would say something that kind of separates, something that I would incorporate into, and I'm glad I did to some degree, I certainly wish maybe I was more diligent about it, is spend time reflecting. With all this stuff I've just talked about, you're going to have time on your hands. You're going to have time to take quietly to yourself. And I encourage you to be reading, teach yourself things about life, the world, figure out what you want. But also, reading is a way to learn about the world. Writing is a way to learn about yourself. So take time to, what I do now in my favorite journaling practice, quote unquote, that doesn't feel as much like an assignment, but allows me to learn a lot about myself, is like a week in review. So Sunday morning, quiet time to yourself, write about how the week went, not in a, I got this done, I got this done, I got this done thing, because then it's just more of a tactical review and more of a business element, but more of a self-exploration. Ask yourself, how did I feel this week? Am I moving closer to my goals? Who did I talk to? I saw a cute girl at the gym, but I didn't go up to talk to her. Or I saw a cute girl at the gym and I did go up to talk to her. Because then you have a really cool storyline to go back and review when you do your year in review. And 2, you start to learn a little bit more about yourself, what you're actually thinking. Because if it's just this echo chamber, the thoughts are just rattling around in your mind. There's 1,000 things going on. So many people talking to you. You're meeting people. You're moving. College is a stimulus-rich environment. So taking some time to have some intentional stillness is massive and will definitely separate you from a lot of other people. I think an important book to read while you're in college, there's a lot, but The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The sooner you can read that book, the sooner your life will improve. It's just learning to be present is so unbelievably uncommon amongst people, but especially college students, and just understanding the power of the present moment and detaching yourself from labels as well as results. Life becomes a lot more free, a lot less anxious, both of which college likes to take away from you, your freedom and your peace of mind. So that's one that I would say read early and begin to implement a lot of the practices in, but it could be a whole podcast in of itself, and maybe it will be in the future. Also, don't be dogmatic in your approach to your routine in college. It's a perfect time to experiment with what works for you. Try different studying techniques, try Pomodoro, try different note-taking techniques, try to meditate, just experiment with what works in your daily routine. Try training in the morning, super early in the morning, try training super late at night. Figure out what your body likes, figure out what works for you in your schedule. And then a huge one, which I'm surprised I haven't touched on yet, is sleep. College is really, really hard to get high quality sleep, but it is unbelievably necessary. It's not more necessary in college than the rest of your life. It is a building block of a productive and vital life. So you need to get sleep as a non-negotiable. This is another one that you're going to block on your calendar as a wake up and go to bed time, and make it kind of a fixed thing. Now, college is going to be nearly impossible to consistently wake up early and go to bed at 8 or 9. It just isn't going to happen. Your living situation, unless you live alone, if you live in a fraternity house, if you live in a dormitory, if you live in a house with other kids on campus, whatever your living situation is, if it's with other people, in all likelihood, it's going to be shifted down to go to bed between 11, 12, 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. But you shouldn't beat yourself up for this. Ideally, you want to wake and rise with the sun, but that can be for when you graduate. Within college, the important thing is that you're getting the volume of sleep that you need. So just shift the schedule down. If you're going to bed at midnight, that means you don't need to wake up till 10 a.m. Try to structure your classes as best as possible. And if you have 8 a.m.s, you're going to have to separate yourself and say to your friends like, hey, I'm going to bed at 9 or 10 each night. It may come to the place where you're literally using like eye mask or earplugs. I slept with earplugs for a full semester of college because I was in a quad room in my fraternity house, and it certainly was not a very peaceful environment, but I had 8 a.m. classes 2 days a week, and 3 days a week I had 6 a.m. practices. So I was getting up before 5 a.m. multiple times a week, and so I needed to be going to bed for my body and for my mind. And so I slept with earplugs and did what I had to do. You can get used to it. It's really not that bad. It's honestly kind of peaceful. Not maybe like a lifelong endeavor I encourage, but the sleep has to be a non-negotiable, because what you will notice really quickly is when the sleep goes, everything else starts to go. It's really hard to be productive when you're dog tired, falling asleep in class, falling asleep between classes. You're not going to be able to train as hard. You're not going to want to train as hard. You're not going to want to walk around. You're not going to want to even be social. You're not going to want to really enjoy your college experience, and you're not going to really be able to. So sleep has to be a pillar, because it's a pillar for a good life, and college is no exception. And then finally, a word of encouragement for college is, if you have the opportunity, study abroad. I know that's not routine related, but it is an unbelievable experience to see another part of the world while you're young, without your family, with other young people. So make that a priority. If you can fit it into your curriculum, whether it's an exchange or just a summer trip or a Maymester or whatever, study abroad. It's amazing. It's obviously like an annoying trope, like study abroad changed my life, but that's a huge one. So that is my thoughts on college. Alec, I hope that was helpful. And to anyone in university, I hope likewise you can implement some of that stuff and see some quote unquote success as you define it for yourself. Similarly, I had a pretty interesting question from Ryan, who I've had on this podcast before. Check out that episode 21 or something. Ryan Ayala, he hosts his own podcast, which is excellent, The Alchemist Library. Check it out if you haven't. But he asked, if you were to start a high school, what would the curriculum look like? And I haven't prepped the answer to this, so I haven't prepped the answer to this previous to recording, so I'm going to have to think about it as I go. But I think the education system at large is, many people might classify it as broken. I might be a little less optimistic and say that it is working, but it was working as designed, which is to create people that are good employees, but not vital and curious and productive human beings. Conversation for sure for another podcast, getting into a lot of tinfoil hat stuff, which I enjoy, but will not go into that rabbit hole on this episode. But as far as a high school curriculum, I think the differences I would make immediately is like, first, I want to engender a sense of love of reading. And so taking away the requirements of when you're getting quizzed or tested on the reading that you're doing, I would transition a lot more. And I think some schools are trying to do this, but I just think it's kind of a lost art. But like the Socratic style, where classes are conversational, like it's not didactic where someone is teaching down to you and you have to memorize the PowerPoint and then go do the homework and then turn it in and look for the grade. But like an actual conversation, I think just teachers that treat students like people and get them to be excited and curious about the things that they're learning, regardless of the subject, but certainly in the arts and in history and all those things. So trying my best to structure it where they would love reading, giving them options to read different books, definitely suggesting some of the really, really important ones. And I think a lot of the classics that have been lost over the curriculum, and I didn't go to public school, but I know from friends that now teach, it's pretty concerning what's being taught in public schools, and like the books that are now no longer being read is a problem. So including classics, but allowing there to be kind of leeway, because books have to find people at the right time in their life. You can give someone an amazing reading list, and people often ask me, what books should they read? And I can give you a list, but quite frankly, books hit different when they come to you at the right time. And I do believe that they do. And even returning to the same book, they say that like reading a book twice, you'll never have the same experience not because the book changed, or how does the quote goes, a man who returns to the river will never find the river the same. And it's not because the river changed, but it's because the man changed. And that is exactly what the case with books. As you read, you change and go through seasons of life, and what you take out of a book at different times will be different each time that you read it. So going back to quality books, but I've gone a bit tangential there. So engender a sense of reading. I think also basic financial literacy across the board is super important. So teaching how to manage a budget, where does money come from? What is fractional reserve banking? And then like health, wellness, and vitality, like a basic class on nutrition and exercise, like how to design, what is progressive overload, what are the macronutrients, what, generally speaking, based on the data that we actually have and not funded by big food, should you be eating on a daily basis? How should you experiment with eating, especially like even for girls, like how should you train and eat differently across your menstrual cycle? Just a more in tune and vital awareness around your body. It's like a perfect time to teach like high school and through college how to learn about your body. But unfortunately, if you're not doing it on your own right now, there's no structure for it. So something about wellness and vitality. And then I would definitely go into a class on, I think, a world religion should be taught somewhat agnostically, but I think it's important to study the religions of the world, the history of religion and spirituality through time, watch how humans have evolved and created different religions and use them, and parlay that into a class on the power of the mind, the power of teaching people how to meditate, the law of attraction, the law of resonance, the mirror principle, all of these things that are pretty the 80-20 principle. There's so many of these foundational, like universal truths that are just not taught. And again, I land in the camp that it's not taught on purpose because they want to control people. But if you don't want to believe in the conspiracy theory like myself, and you don't really like the way you look with the tinfoil hat, that's fine. Maybe it's just a product of the way that the curriculum has morphed over time as an accident. Either way, we can all agree that it is problematic, and there are things that we can add. So again, this is my answer. I don't have to caveat it, but I think off the top of my head, that is the things that I would include and or adjust about standard high school curriculum. Like basic level of relationship training as far as attachment styles, masculine and feminine, sex ed from more than just this is what a penis and this is what a vagina is, but more of like, this is what attraction looks like. This is the energetic exchange that is involved with sex. Maybe getting a bit woo-woo for school curriculum, but if I'm building it for my cult, this is what we teach. Yeah, I think that's most of what I can think off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm omitting massive categories. I would still include team sports. I think that's really important. I know that's stepping outside of curriculum for Ryan's specific question, but I think there are really important things about the way high school is structured currently, the social environments, kids just kind of figuring it out, right? Like just putting a bunch of kids around each other. You learn a lot about life and people by being around people and living life. So there's no substitute for just the interactions and living. And I would like to include a lot more of that. So there's your answer, Ryan. I hope it was good. And I know that we share a fair amount of similar views. So maybe we should sit down and write a curriculum sometime, and some people can send their kids to our high school. I guess related to Alex's original question, maybe health and wellness in general, but Logan, who I also had on the podcast, he asked, what is my current supplement stack? I do not currently supplement with much greatly, and I'm really fascinated in like the deep biohacking world. I think it's like very aspirational. I look at guys like Ben Greenfield and even a young gun in the space, Noah Ryan. You can follow him on Twitter. There's a ton of good stuff from him. So, and I plan to have him on the podcast soon. Ben Greenfield might be a bit of a reach at my current level, but I would love to have him in the future as well. But the biohacking space and like deep supplementation, mineral enrichment, like it's a world that I find really fascinating. I will say currently, like, I'm not spending all of like free capital I have, I'm pouring into my business. So I'm not like spending a bunch of money on supplementation. I think there are tiers to wellness. And like the first thing is like train hard, eat high quality food sources, sleep really well. Like once that domain is fixed, then you can get into these like tertiary things of like meal timing, glycemic response. How does your body respond to different nutrient sources? Should you do blood work? How do we look at mineral content? How do we detox heavy metals? Again, all of it is really, really fascinating to me. And I think there is a place for it if you want to take your wellness to like an elite level. But I think for the every person, if I were to make a supplement stack that you should be taking, I think all of your water should be well filtered. Ideally, like tap water is horrible. I still unfortunately drink it because I don't have the funds to get like a proper filtration system, but like a reverse osmosis filtration system, and then remineralize it with electrolytes. There's a bunch of them out there, but you should prioritize sodium, magnesium, and potassium. Sodium being the heaviest. Your body operates on sodium and potassium pumps. Every single cell is flipping on and off because of salt and potassium, or sodium and potassium specifically. So replenishing your water with salt, all of the water you drink should have some salt in it. Otherwise, you're actually dehydrating your body because as we know from osmolarity, like when you pour more water into a solution, the solvent gets spread out more, and you're actually just taking the minerals that your cells need out into the free water. It's why you pee all the time. When you overhydrate, you could drink a gallon of water a day. If you're pissing all the time, there's a problem. So replenish your water with minerals. And another one is if you live anywhere short of like the west coast of the US where it's sunny and warm all the time, you're probably not getting enough vitamin D. Always get sunlight in your eyes and walk outside as much as possible. Expose your skin to the sun. But if you can't, and I'm in Atlanta, so we get the rain and we get the cold, and certainly right now it's not ideal for being shirtless outside. So vitamin D, and take way more of it. It's a water-soluble vitamin, meaning you can't necessarily overdose, but the recommended daily dose, quote unquote, on the bottle is going to be like 5,000 IUs, but your body, if you spend like 30 minutes in the sun, is receiving something like 20,000. So you can take a lot, and getting a high quality vitamin D supplement is, I think, super critical. Vitamin D is a hormone that is produced by the body when you're exposed to sunlight. So when you're not exposed to sunlight, supplement with vitamin D, very critical with regulating testosterone, sleep-wake cycle, lots of stuff. So if I was creating a supplement stack for the everyman, vitamin D for sure, remineralize your water, take creatine if you train. There's almost no reason not to. There's minimal studies on hair loss. It seems to be somewhat correlated. No causal link has been determined. So if you struggle getting enough food and specifically protein in, you can get a whey protein powder. I suggest always eating whole foods. One, you'll be more full and enjoy it more. But if it's hard for you to get all that in because you're a hard gainer and you need to eat more, getting a high quality grass-fed whey. ProMix is a company that I suggest. There's others out there. But yeah, I think the idea of supplementation is in the word itself. It's supplemental to the main thing. So keep the main thing, train hard, eat good food. You're better served spending a little bit extra money getting higher quality meat than you are spending $50 for a tub of protein powder. That is my opinion, but I think it is backed by science. So that's my supplement stack, Logan. Right now, all I'm doing is just the remineralization of water, and everything else is pretty much behavioral. All my free capital, like I said, is going into the business, and then I try to feed myself high quality food. Kevin asked, how do you balance knowing that someone you love is both good for you and not? This is not an easy question, and I'm certainly no relationship coach, but I have experienced love and loss more than once. And I've done a lot of exploration. I am maybe to my fault, a pretty deep thinking person. And so every time love comes in and out of my life, I do a lot of self-reflection and then also a lot of external learning, reading as much as I can, trying to understand more and more about attraction, man, woman, masculine, feminine. And there's a lot to learn. We are not really equipped well, especially very few people are equipped well from their parents, their upbringing, to be prepared for a relationship. It is one of the most dynamic and hard things you can do in your life because it's literally trying to meld with an entire another person. And if you think about how complicated you are and appreciate the fact that they are equally as complicated, you can imagine that 2xing the people problem makes it pretty interesting. But nonetheless, we fall in love and it's a beautiful part of life. And so I think it is an aspiration that we should all have to find a partner that fulfills us. And we shouldn't give up the good work and be deterred by the risk of being hurt. But balancing someone that you love, and I suppose this question can extend outside of romantic partners to friends as well. I've talked on this podcast before about separating yourself from toxic people in your life. So I think when I reread the question, how do you balance knowing that someone you love is both good for you and not? I'm going to assume that you mean like, how can you tell whether they are good for you or not, and what the decision to be made about that is? Because like, I think there's levels to it. You need to determine, are they good for me? Are they not good for me? Why not? But if you go a step back, you need to first always be able to define, who am I and what do I want? And so you have to have a very strong sense of identity and direction before you can make an evaluation whether someone in your life is good for you or bad for you, because it's impossible to know. And like we talked about on the last episode with the story of the farmer, whether it's heartbreak or any other thing in your life, you can't know for sure in the moment whether it's good or bad, or even ever qualified as good as bad. It just is. It's the way life is taking its course. Your inner purpose is always being realized. But first, explicitly define what you want for yourself, and that means the direction you want to go. What do you want to have a family? If so, what's that family going to look like? How many kids do you want? Where do you want to live? What do you want to teach those kids? What do you believe about God? What do you believe about the world? What do you believe about yourself? What does your future partner look like? I've talked about before, creating the list. Like, I have a list in my phone. What does Zach Shankin's girlfriend look like? I know what she looks like. I know what she's interested in. I know how she behaves. I know her family background. It's all explicitly written in there because I can't find her without knowing what she looks like. You have to first know what you want. You have to know what you want out of yourself, your partner in your life. So that has to be the first priority. Bringing somebody else in the equation, friend or romantic partner otherwise, has to be the second step. But let's say that you've done that and now you know who you are and what you want. From there, how do you know if someone's you love is both good for you or not? I always land now and try to always return to the place where other people's actions will tell you the truth about the situation. From the 4 Agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz, he talks about not making assumptions. It's one of the 4 agreements you should take from the book. Do not make assumptions. And so it's in my affirmation that I listen to all the time. The actions of others show me the truth. And that is true. People will say all kinds of stuff because they don't want to hurt you, because they don't want to feel like they're hurting you, for whatever reason. But assuming something based on one text or no text or one call or the tone of somebody's voice or how they acted one day, how they didn't act the other day, making assumptions is how you get hurt. And it's both positive and negative assumptions. Like assuming someone really, really likes you and then you get blindsided because they lost attraction, you got hurt because you made an assumption. And likewise, don't suffer imagined troubles like from the Stoics. If someone's acting a little bit cold towards you in a relationship, don't assume immediately it's because they don't like you or they cheated on you or they found somebody else. Like, you're just suffering pain before it happens. The actions will tell you. They will break up with you or they will ghost you permanently, and you will know. But also don't assume that they're trying to do so. Assume that their life is equally as complicated as yours and they're going through it, but their actions and time will always tell you the truth. So live from a place of non-attachment to the result. And it's easier said than done. I'm not like a perfect yogi where I don't get heartbreak and I don't get upset and I don't get whatever, but I'm working towards this, and it is a frame that has helped me, and I've learned from my previous experiences. Don't expect anything and just live your life. The most important thing specifically as a man is to find your purpose. Be on the mission, and then the person and people that are meant to be with you will come into your life. Man, woman, partner, friend, all of it. Just go on the path, figure out what you want for you, and everything else is going to take care of itself. We are the universe manifest, and the illusion is separation itself. Everything around you is a reflection of you. So when you are centered, when you're aligned with your purpose, when you are well, when you come from a place of abundance, those people will be attracted into your life and you'll be filled with it. But if you come from a place of scarcity and lack and worry, like, do they like me? Like, are they going to go on a date with me? Like, just constantly asking and needing and coming from a place of lack, you're going to be given that. You're going to be given more lack. You're going to be given more desire, more suffering. So easier said than done, for sure. It is not easy at all, but try to always frame yourself into a place where Their actions will show you the truth. Are they good for you or are they not? Maybe they just are. They are in your life now, accept that they are there for a reason, and whether that reason is to teach you a lesson now or it's for a season or whatever, you will know in time. Their actions will show you how they are meant to be in your life. And it's not easy. And sometimes it means you're going to have to say goodbye. And the emotional attachment we get with other people is why we get hurt. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't grow emotionally attached, nor can you ever be fully detached unless you're like properly monastic and Zen and whatever. But if you're going to be a normal ass person, you're going to fall in love with people. You're going to make really, really strong friendships, but their actions will tell you explicitly whether or not they're meant to be with you. And the more in tune with who you are and what you want, it becomes really, really clear. If you don't want to drink anymore, and then that you had a friend that is always like, hey man, let's go out, and they consistently are like nagging and bothering you, and that's the only way that you guys want to hang out or they want to hang out with you, their actions are telling you that they're not going to be a part of this next part of your life. They're not aligned with where you are going in your life. And likewise, if you're in a relationship and things go awry, or God forbid you get cheated on or something, there's definitely work for you to do reflectively. There's lessons to learn there. You were not innocent of that, given that it was a relationship. Some amount of that you're responsible for, but know that relationships don't dissolve because of you not being enough. It's just an incompatibility. There's a good quote, and it goes something like, rejection is not a sign that you're less than, it's a sign of incompatibility. And rejection can be taken in the broad sense, like a friend group shunning you. It could be the rejection of applying for a job and not getting it. You were simply incompatible with the company and the role, and there's a reason that you didn't get it. And it's not because you aren't enough. You just are not compatible with that piece. You are just a puzzle piece not shaped for the hole that you're supposed to go into. And that could be a job role. It could be a relationship. It could be a friend group. It could be whatever. And those things are shifting constantly. You are changing shape. The holes of life are changing shape. Kind of a loose metaphor for sure, but understand that it all will work out in time. And if you don't believe that, it's fine. I recognize that is a statement of belief, but I choose to believe that because it makes my life a lot better. It brings me a lot of peace, and I can live from a place of abundance and know that my purpose is always being realized. And I don't always see it. I'm not always happy. Sometimes I cry when I'm in bed, and I don't know what's going to work out the next day. And there's times I wake up and I'm like, I can't do it another day, but attack it one day at a time. Literally just piece it together, drag yourself if you have to, but as long as you don't give up, it's all going to keep going. So stay in this thing and we can all win. Bayan Lee, another guest of the pod. You can see a recurring theme here. The real ones asking questions. So shout out Bayan Lee if you're listening. I can assume that you are. I know you're a loyal supporter. He said, is the podcast making the impact you purposed it for? And are you still excited about it? It would be hard for me to measure the impact my podcast is having. And I'm certainly not sure even what I purposed it for. I feel like it came in congruence with a calling above myself. And to some degree, I just feel like it was a good platform to share my thoughts and for people to get to know kind of what I'm about as I'm building my business. So for people to know and have proof of concept that I'm consistent and think deeply about these things, and they can trust me to have made a product that can change their life, that being the Vitruvian Man program. So as far as that, I think it is having a positive impact. Certainly I've only received positive feedback from it. I'm sure people are talking shit behind my back, but it's behind my back, so I don't know. And for the people that do reach out, DM me, swipe up on a story, whatever it is, you guys are fucking awesome. I think you are mouthpieces of the universe speaking to me, or God or source or whatever, saying that I should keep going, and it's having a positive impact. And if I were to die tomorrow, I know that my words can live on for as long as these platforms do exist in digital form, and people can hear my thoughts and it can help them because I know it's helped others. So certainly it is having the impact that I like it to. And as far as audience and scale, it will grow with time. I'm not particularly attached to that. And then am I still excited about it? Certainly. It is definitely a grind now that I've committed to the once a week thing. And I'm, as you can tell by this upload time on this episode, the pace is tough to maintain once a week. And I'm hoping to get to above once a week once I can kind of level out my workload with some other stuff. But it's exciting. I'm very excited about it. I think there's like an infinite world of things to talk about. So as long as I can remain curious for the rest of my life, I think I'll have something to sit down and talk about, whether it's with somebody else or whether I'm rambling quiet to myself in my room and to my camera. So yes, Bionly, I think it is having the impact I would like, and I am very excited about it. And then one that I want to close on is Shelly asked, what do you consider your major successes? I think it's related to the last question, certainly, and a good one to end on. But what do I consider my major successes? Well, I've talked on this podcast before about my favorite definition to date of success, and it comes from Earl Nightingale. And he says that success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal, meaning you are successful as you are moving towards a worthy goal that you've set for yourself. Now, the worthy goal is up to you. It's in your mind's eye. But I've set goals for myself, and every single day that I step closer towards them and make progressive steps towards them, I am successful. So I consider myself very successful every day in the actual steps towards the goals that I'm setting for myself, not just in accomplishing them as I do. So that is something. But as far as things come and past, boxes that I've checked, I think that I am and try to continue to work to be a good older brother to my two younger brothers. I don't think that Nicholas and Michael listen to every episode that I record, but for the ones that they do tune into, if you guys are listening, you mean the world to me and always will. And I would literally die to protect you guys. I'm going to avoid trying to cry. That would be crazy. First solo pod crying in my room. But being a good older brother to them is an unbelievable success, probably the biggest of my life. And I try to continue to live that. I hope and pray every day for them and hope that they see me as someone to look up to, an aspirational figure in some sense. So being an excellent older brother, and then extended from there, the really granular stuff. I graduated college. I don't see that as a major success. It felt kind of automatic. I really think it's hard to like fail out of college. Like you basically have to try, or like you basically just decide you don't want to graduate. Like I feel like people who drop out or fail out of a college, it's not even because they couldn't. It's just because like they decided it was no longer aligned with their goals. And quite frankly, the college system is fucked. So people who drop out, people who fail out, mad respect. You just made a decision. You didn't like quote unquote fail. So I don't see college as a major success, but many people do. I think the fact that I was able to set out for myself to become an entrepreneur, and in the 9 months I was working full-time as an engineer, building the business that I have now, and now stepping into this full-time, which I need to do a full podcast on, kind of quitting my job, burning the boats. I'll probably do that closer to February when I step out of the kind of loose part-time role situation I'm working with them, contractorship situation. But more or less I work full time on this now, which is super exciting. And so I feel very proud to have like grinded mornings, nights, all weekend around a full-time job to be able to now have a business that I can work for full time and have a massive impact in an area that I care about. So that's got to be a big one. I am still young and I have lots of aspirations. I think my lifetime major success, of course, will be my family and my children. That is future tense. And then other than that, some smaller stuff along the way, setting intermediate goals with whether it's fitness or sports, set and achieved. I don't look at those as major though. I think to answer your question, Shelly, being a good older brother has got to be the crowning achievement so far. And I claim that as an assumption. You'd have to ask my brothers if the answer was true, but I work really, really hard at it and think about it all the time. So I hope that I'm doing a good job. I think that's a good place to wrap up. This has been the ramblings and Ask Me Anything of episode 24. If you've made it thus far, thank you. Call to action would be to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow me on all of my platforms. I'm posting a lot more on Twitter now. Twitter's super fun. So at ZDSCHENKEN, same on Instagram. And then follow along on YouTube, where you can listen and watch this podcast if you're on an audio-only platform like Apple Pods or Spotify. There's video on Spotify, though. But that is all for this week. Remember, your time and attention are your most valuable resources. Thank you for spending a little of them with me today. Memento Mori, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Vitruvian Man podcast.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater. so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.